Chapter 5. Initiation. At this time, the people in the hall were conversing, seemingly discussing something. The young Taoist monk who had led Zhang Xiaofan and Lin Jingyu straightened his robe outside and respectfully said, "Master, venerable seniors, this disciple Qingyun has been instructed to bring these two young double quotes." Before he could finish, a shrill wail suddenly rang out in the solemn sacred hall, interrupting him. "Ghost! Evil ghost! A ghost!" Qingyun was startled, but Zhang Xiaofan and Lin Jingyu were even more shocked, for though the voice was shrill and unpleasant, it was extremely familiar. Zhang Xiaofan paid no heed and rushed straight into the hall, shouting loudly, "Uncle Wang! Uncle Wang, is that you?" In his urgency, his voice carried tones of anxiety and sobbing that moved those present. They saw in the corner, behind the crowd, a middle-aged, woodcutter-dressed man tightly curled up in the corner, shaking all over with his hands clutching his head. From the gaps between his fingers came the repeated muttering of "Ghost, ghost." Zhang Xiaofan and the trailing Lin Jingyu immediately recognized this as a kindly woodcutter named Wang from Grass Temple Village, the second eldest brother who was always warm and smiling, especially good-natured towards the children, who whenever he went to the mountains to gather firewood, he would bring back wild fruits to share with the kids. Without a second thought, Zhang Xiaofan dashed over, grabbing Wang's shoulders and shouting, "Uncle Wang, what happened? Why did everyone in the village die? And my mother, my father, what happened to them? Tell me." Seemingly roused by Zhang Xiaofan's barrage of questions, Wang slowly lifted his head to look at the boy in front of him, no longer muttering "Ghost, ghost." The entire hall was moved, falling utterly silent as even those seated stood up involuntarily to watch the scene unfold. Yet Wang's eyes were bloodshot and filled with fear and confusion. He stared at Zhang Xiaofan for a long while without a word, brow furrowed as if straining to recall something. At this point, someone from Qingyun could no longer hold back, taking a step forward to speak, but was quietly held back by the person beside them. Zhang Xiaofan grew increasingly anxious seeing Wang's lack of response, the lifeless look in his eyes fixed on him. He raised his voice, "Uncle Wang, what's wrong with you?" Unexpectedly, Wang's entire body jolted from the loud shout, terror overwhelming his face as he suddenly scurried backwards in a flurry, once again clutching his head and curling up, wailing incessantly, "Ghost, ghost, ghost." Sighs immediately arose across the hall as disappointment showed on the Qingyun disciples' faces, those who had stood now dejectedly sitting back down. As Zhang Xiaofan tried to question further, Lin Jingyu grabbed his arm. Zhang Xiaofan turned in confusion, but saw tears in Lin Jingyu's eyes as the latter said despondently, "It's no use. He's gone mad." Zhang Xiaofan's mind went blank with a ringing sound, frozen in place and speechless. A year older than Zhang Xiaofan, Lin Jingyu was more perceptive. Glancing at the people in the hall, he saw they were all dressed as Qingyun disciples, a mix of monks and lay people, most armed with swords. The six seated in the chairs exuded particular poise and distinction. Among them were 3 monastics and 3 laymen, the one in the central chair wearing a deep green Taoist robe, with a gracious crane-like bearing and bright, gentle eyes, was naturally the renowned ZhuXian Zhenren, abbot of Qingyun. Not saying another word, Lin Jingyu pulled Zhang Xiaofan forward, kneeling before the 6 elders. Kowtow. He bowed his head repeatedly towards ZhuXian Zhenren. ZhuXian Zhenren studied the 2 boys carefully before letting out a soft sigh. "Poor children, you may rise." But Lin Jingyu did not get up, lifting his gaze to this immortal-like figure as he mournfully said, "Zhenren, we are ignorant youths who have suddenly encountered this great calamity. We truly do not know what to do. With your vast supernatural powers to perceive the past and future, please take charge of our situation." Zhang Xiaofan was not as eloquent, his mind a jumbled mess at the moment, but still echoed, "Yes, immortal grandmother, please take charge." The crowd could not help but show slight smiles upon hearing this. Zhang Xiaofan's words were naive child speak, but their eyes then turned towards Lin Jingyu. Despite his tender age in the midst of catastrophe, and facing a legendary figure like ZhuXian Zhenren, Lin Jingyu spoke methodically and coherently with remarkable poise exceeding that of ordinary children, let alone the utterly clueless Zhang. "This disciple will hide nothing, Please ask, Zhenren. ZhuXian nodded slightly. How did you survive this calamity? Lin Jingyu froze momentarily before replying. To inform Zhenren, I recall sleeping in my bed at home last night. But when I woke this morning, I was lying outside with Xiaofan under a pine tree. I do not know what happened. Later, Xiaofan woke me up, and we ran back to the village, only to see that the horrific sight before passing out in fright. Zhenren furrowed his brow, turning to Zhang Xiaofan. So you were the one who woke him. How about your situation? Zhang Xiaofan pondered for a moment. I also don't know how I ended up there. When I awoke, Jingyu was lying beside me, so I woke him up. Zhenren exchanged glances with the other brand masters, all displaying puzzlement in their eyes. If some expert had rescued them, why only save these two children? But if not, then it made no sense regardless. After some contemplation, Zhenren said, So you have no recollection of last night's events? The two boys replied in unison, None whatsoever. True Man sighed and called out, Songdaran. Here, master, a Qingyun disciple responded, tall and sturdy, dressed in common attire. He had been standing behind a short, fat man who was sitting, likely a disciple of that man. True Man said, You were the first to discover the situation in Kaomiao village. Please recount what happened that day. Songdaran, with a loud voice, said, Yes, early this morning, disciple and several fellow martial brothers returned from an errand, flying back through the air. When passing over Kaomiao village, disciple unintentionally looked down and saw more than 200 corpses piled together in the village, a gruesome sight. Disciple and the others hurried down to investigate, only to find these two children behind the village, unconscious. We brought one back first. Later, inside the village's latrine. He pointed to Wang Ershu, who was crouched in a corner, and continued, We found this man, however. He seemed dazed and confused. No matter how we questioned him, he kept repeating the words, Ghost, ghost, evil ghost.